Oh, God. Let's give them. Close. Thank you. Well, welcome members, officers, members of the public, both present here in person and watching on the YouTube podcast at home, to this very first meeting of the Planning Applications Committee of the new council. Before anything else, I would like to express my thanks on behalf of the council to ex-councillor Edward Hawkins, who chaired the Planning Applications Committee for 8 years and whose knowledge of planning will be sorely missed by us all. The majority of members of the council and of this planning committee are new, although there are some old hands present. Planning is the activity of the council that has a real and direct effect on people's lives. It's not possible to please everyone, and there are rarely applications where there is no one opposing. Whilst we all support our own wards and those who elected us, we must never forget that we also have a duty owed to the borough as a whole. Thankfully, we have a team of officers who are here to offer us independent professional advice. I hope that you've all found the training not just timely but useful in preparing for the work on the most active of all the council's committees. And in particular, I've taken note of the annex to the agenda that was sent out before you, giving some guidance that form the basis of the training. But it's you, the members, who have the final say. It's called democracy. Now, having said all that, can we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor John Skipper.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. You have a statement to make on that?
Yes, thank you. Since the agenda was published, we have been made aware of a number of errors in the minutes from the previous meeting that are in the agenda pack. A revised set was published earlier today, as a supplement to this agenda. But just to go through them, unfortunately we missed Councillor Betton's apologies. Councillors Page and Tedder was listed as being as substitutes when they were actually in attendance. The resolution on minute 664/P doesn't actually make sense in the original version, and that has been amended to say that resolved that application 220828 be deferred in order to allow the applicant the opportunity to re-engage with Natural England to seek retraction of their objections. Note 3 was amended because one of the councillors managed to vote twice, so that has been amended just to give the correct voting. And then note 4, that has just been amended slightly to read, following the decision at the end of the meeting, some members queried the validity of the reasons for deferral of the application. The committee was advised that there were no restrictions or defined parameters in the Constitution on reasons relating to the deferral of planning applications. Thank you. And the correct version are in there beside it.
Yes. Given all of those amendments and changes, does anybody have any other questions regarding the minutes? If not, am I okay to sign these? Agreed? Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks. There we go. Next item, declarations of interest. Members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest and non-pecuniary interest they may have with respect to matters which are to be considered at this meeting. Members who consider they may have an interest are invited to consult the monitoring officer or the Democratic Service Manager prior to the meeting. If you did that. Councillor Garrett.
I haven't, but it's a non-pecuniary. When I was portfolio holder, I was made aware that this planning application was likely to come ahead, and I also visited a number of times when we were looking at the Lawrence Lodge for the Afghan housing in the emergency. So it's a very non-pecuniary, but I thought I'd better mention it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Noble.
Thank you. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in application 210865 FFU, land south of Belden Bridge Road, West End, Woking, being the ward councillor for the area, and I have had a discussion with former councillor Alloway on the matter. But I come to the meeting with a clear and open mind.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. One of them relates to an application which I understand has been withdrawn from this evening, so I don't know if I need to declare that or not, which is the Westcroft Park Farm.
Oh, no, no, that's okay.
Okay. And the other one also relates to the application concerning Belden Bridge Road. I too have spoken with Councillor Alloway in relation to this application.
Okay, thank you very much.
May I also raise a point of order on that? Because I understand that Councillor Alloway wanted to come and talk as a member of the public on that application, and he was told that it hadn't met the criteria for public speaking. But here it is starred and it says that it has met the criteria for public speaking. Thank you.
Anybody know anything about that?
Did not check that out. I think we said it was just it didn't meet the speaking total.
I'm reliably informed that it doesn't meet the criteria for... No.
I'm given to understand, I didn't actually give the advice myself, but I understand that whilst it did meet the criteria for public speaking, the public speaking, he hadn't submitted a representation technically in terms of those criteria, and he was advised to talk to other fellow councillors to get his point across at the time. So, yeah.
So again, I understand that he had emailed in order to speak publicly at this meeting, and that he did that before the deadline for public speaking. When we get to this agenda, just to give the heads up, I am going to recommend a deferral on 2 different grounds. So if you want me to wait till then, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. We'll wait. Read the human rights statement. Okay. Okay. With the planning applications. Okay, moving on to the planning applications. 2 have been withdrawn. Item 7, 61 London Road, has been formally withdrawn by the applicant. And item 8, Westcroft Park Farm, the County Council have withdrawn their objection and are reconsidering the comments regards highways. Consequently, the item will be deferred until the officers have had full time to consider the effect of those changes. Moving on to the applications themselves, we have a public speaker present, both in the chamber and online, for item 9, and I propose to take item 9 first, so that they don't have to sit through all the rest in order to make their point. So moving on to item 9, which is on page 175 of the documentation. Mr. Carty.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the provision of 5 dwellings on land within the West End Housing Reserve site. It has been called in by a former councillor. Please note the updates, which include amended and additional conditions. Please note that the legal agreement has been completed and the recommendation is now to grant, subject to conditions. I'll lead you through the plans and photos. The application site is located on a triangular piece of land within the Housing Reserve site at the edge of the settlement of West End, with the green belt to the east. The site is located on the south side of Belden Bridge Road, to the east of the Rose Meadow development. The right-hand image is from the 2012 Local Plan Proposals map. It shows the extent of the Housing Reserve site and the amount of development already built around this site. This is one of the few remaining undeveloped sites within the reserve site. Here is a view of the site taken from Belden Bridge Road with the Rose Meadow properties in the distance. In the application site, with views to the east boundary and southwest corner, to the left and right respectively. The bottom photo is a view looking east on Belden Bridge Road. And it shows the application site on the right and Belden Bridge Gardens to the left. The 40-mile-an-hour speed limit signs have been moved to the east, so that the speed limit in front of the site is now 30 miles per hour.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's very difficult to hear. I don't know if you could move it a little bit closer to you.
I'll move it. Here is the proposed block plan with an image of the footpath link to the northwest corner of the site on the right-hand side. The proposal will provide 5 dwellings, with 2 dwellings facing Belden Bridge Road and the remainder arranged around the cul-de-sac access. The land to the northwest corner would be retained as open space with a footpath link to the road network into the village. Proposed parking would provide at least 2 spaces per dwelling and rear amenity space which exceeds minimum standards. As a comparison, here is the layout for the earlier approved scheme on the site. Here are some typical elevation details which show the traditional approach with the proposed dwellings. These are typical floor plans. The proposal is considered to be acceptable in terms of this principle and character. The access and parking arrangements are also acceptable, and measures to improve highway safety through the provision of vehicle-activated signage are proposed. The application is recommended for approval as amended on the update with the completion of the legal agreement for SAM. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said earlier, there are 2 public speakers for this application. In support is Tilly Wishaw, and in objection, virtually, is Ali Fazeli. So could I ask Miss Wishaw to speak? Is it 4 minutes? Yeah. You have 4 minutes to state your case, and someone will remind you when there's 1 minute to go.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Tilly Wishaw, and I am Senior Planning Manager at Red Row Homes. The application for 5 homes relates to land designated as a housing reserve site within the Council's development plan policies, which excludes it from the Greenbelt. The planning permission was granted on site in 2016 for the construction of 3 dwellings to be accessed off Belden Bridge Road. This planning permission was implemented and therefore remains extant. The current application originally proposed the construction of 7 detached dwellings. Following the submission of the application, concern was raised about the impact of the development on the frontage trees, with particular reference to 2 veteran trees. The County Highway Authority also raised concerns with regard to pedestrian access, which was originally proposed along the vehicular access, which would have required a footpath to be built along the frontage. In order to address the concerns, following discussions with the planning officer, the number of dwellings was reduced to 5. This enabled the layout to be amended to concentrate development within the eastern part of the site, with the narrower western part, which includes high-quality trees to the frontage, retained open space and landscaping. This new proposal actually results in an increase in usable public open space over the extant consent for 3 dwellings. This ensures the retention of veteran trees with no development proposed within their root protection areas. Pedestrian access is now provided from the northwestern corner of the site, with a path to link the development to the existing footpath via a new crossing point to be provided at the junction between Belden Bridge Road and Kings Road. Additional information has been provided to the council throughout the application in respect of ecology. It's understood that no objection remains from council officers, subject to the provision of certain conditions on the planning permission which have been agreed with the planning officer. A drainage condition has also been added via the update sheet which the council circulated today. The drainage detail to be submitted for the discharge of the condition will respect the existing trees. The layout was designed with careful consideration to neighbouring properties. The proposals therefore do not result in additional overlooking or loss of light to the properties at the rear on Rose Meadow. Redrow have also agreed to a condition which requires the reduction of speed along Belden Bridge Road, which will involve the provision of 2 vehicular activated signs, 1 on either side of the road. The homes respect the character of the local area. The built form extends to only 2 stories, and the materials proposed are reflective of the existing properties surrounding the site. In conclusion, the proposals have been well thought out and provide 5 high-quality homes with an appropriate transition between the settlement and the surrounding countryside. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any from members.
Thank you very much. Members, does anybody have a question of a planning nature to put to Ms. Wilshaw?
One question I have, why on this application are you extending the time to commence the development? Can you expand on that?
The main reason at the moment is because our prime goal has been to get the planning consent. As standard in the Town and Country Planning Act, it's you get 3 years to implement the consent. So in order to allow us time to prepare the site set up and get the technical detail correct, we've just requested for 2 years so we don't have to rush and start badly. We'd rather start well and make sure it's done properly.
It's nothing to do with interest rates or the fact that there's no demand.
Nothing at all, no.
Anybody else have a question of a planning nature to ask? No? Thank you very much. Okay. So can we get them up and running? There we go. Okay. Welcome, Mr. Vaseli. You have 4 minutes to express your views. Somewhere we'll remind you with a minute to go. Time starts whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. So my name's Ali, and I'm speaking on behalf of my family who've been living in Rose Meadow for almost 2 years now. And my main objection is going to be in relation to the ecological impacts of the development and the lack of proactive measures the applicant seems to be taking to mitigate them. Having lived in Rose Meadow myself, and now I've moved out from speaking with my family and other residents, the amount of wildlife living in this small stretch of land isn't really comparable to anywhere we've lived before. We've seen deer, badgers, foxes, and a whole host of other wildlife, especially birds, that we're not even able to identify. And having read the application, we're not really satisfied that the applicant has done enough to mitigate the negative impacts of their development. You know, an example of this is at section 6.6 of the application. So you can see that It's a primarily green stretch of land, and there only seem to be 2 bullet points dealing with ecological issues, which then refer on to section 7.7 of the application, where we've got 2 paragraphs, most of which dealing with policy, but not really addressing the contents of the reports and appraisals that were carried out. So just on a quick look, one of the things that struck me was the preliminary ecological appraisal, which is dated 26th of May 2021. And that states that there are several protected species and notable species which were recorded within a 100-meter search radius of the site. The habitats were assessed by the surveyor as having potential for roosting bats, nesting birds, badgers, reptiles, and common invertebrates. Now, I should stress that the surveyor didn't spend months or years living by that land south of Belden Bridge Road. They only got a snapshot of the wildlife there. And now I imagine that the reason that you consult people like me and my family is that we do spend months and years living there and know the area intimately. And what I'm telling you is that we've seen with our own eyes all the wildlife that we've described. And in particular, the deer stuck out to us as an odd occurrence in a relatively built up area. So we actually ended up taking photos of the deer. The application doesn't mention any of this. So then doing a bit of digging through the documents, obviously for lay people, it's a bit harder. I imagine it's easier for the people attending today. What I can glean is that there are some payments to be made towards conservation elsewhere, and certain trees are going to be left alone. Unfortunately, deer and lots of the other wildlife, they don't live in trees, and they won't benefit from a payment that's made, elsewhere. And the reality is that reading the application, we don't feel that the root issue is addressed. The wildlife which we've seen with our own eyes and which has been identified in the ecological appraisal will have a significant chunk of their living area taken from them. This is accompanied by disruption and noise and pollution, which will arise as part of the building process. And given that the area is surrounded mainly by higher speed roads, 30, 40 miles an hour, this leaves wildlife having to cross these roads to find safer places to live. And for us, an agreement to pay towards conservation efforts or leaving certain trees alone, it doesn't address the root cause of this issue at all. The fact that these issues haven't been addressed at all in the application for a piece of land that is pretty much entirely green space strikes me and other residents as being insufficient. What me and my family want as local residents are good faith efforts to identify the species affected and do something meaningful to protect them. To us, we think that the reason that the land has remained undeveloped for so long is that the only way to meaningfully protect the wildlife is not to develop on it in the first place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Members, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Vazzali of a planning nature? Okay, thank you very much. Now, members, any comments? Anyone want to say anything? Councillor Noble.
Thank you. Could I ask a question, Mr. Carty, please? In paragraph 7.6.3, it refers to the road speed reduction scheme as being part of a much larger residential scheme on the north side of Belden Bridge Road, opposite the application site. And you mentioned that the speed limit's been reduced from 40 to 30 miles per hour, but that this survey indicates an 85th percentile traffic speed to be in excess of 37 miles per hour along that stretch. My concern is that the proposed pathway, I don't know if you can show that slide again of the proposed pathway, leads onto King's Road, but Belden Bridge Road, to the the west side of King's Road, that pathway is extremely narrow, and if you're trying to put a double buggy across that pathway, it's very narrow, and with the trees overhanging as well, it's not easy and it's not safe to walk. There is, because of the curve of the road there, it is blind. You can be blindsided quite easily along that stretch of road, and big lorries do come down there at a fair turn of speed. So I'm concerned that just having lights up, a vehicle activated sign, is not going to be sufficient at that point to calm the traffic sufficiently to get to a safe 30 miles an hour limit. At 30 miles an hour, a child that's hit might survive, but at 37 miles an hour, they've got less likelihood. And that area has a very high population of children. So I'm concerned for the safety of the children in allowing this application.
Any comments?
Do you want to leave the image back on, Catherine? In case I need to use it, I might need to use it. Thank you. First of all, this pedestrian route, it's shown better on the right-hand plan, shows the route that would be taken up to this junction, and then with tactile paving would allow pedestrians to walk there and keep on the south side of Belden Bridge Road. Highways have agreed that as an acceptable arrangement, and it would really just serve these 5 dwellings. It's not for the wider sort of use. That bit there, this is the last of the properties really that would use this access into the village. The 85% percentile for that speed of 37, yes, that is high, and it is a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit now. And the idea is to reduce the speed more, is to get the vehicle activated signs in as a measure to reduce the traffic speeds further than they are at the moment. So I think, and this is a scheme of 5 dwellings for which 3 have already been approved on the site, so it's a net gain of 2 of what's previously been approved. And it's felt that this sort of measure, working with highways on this, that this would be an acceptable solution in highway terms.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm picking up on that point. If highways have said that they think traffic speed monitors should be there, and the percentile is 37 miles per hour, that's literally going to tell someone as they fly through that they're driving at 37 miles an hour. It's actually not going to stop them going faster than 37 miles an hour. If it's, and obviously highways have highlighted it as a problem because they're suggesting it. So is there something else that could be put in place that will actually slow those cars down? I don't know that area that well, but based on what Councillor Noble said, obviously it's potentially going to be a very dangerous area. So is there anything else we can ask of highways? I don't know, sleeping policemen, and I know they cost money, but the cost of money compared to a life, I think is obviously, it's not insignificant. So I would like to get some feedback on that that area. Thank you.
What we have to be really careful of is the size of the development and the net gain that this development provides, which is 2 over what's been previously approved, 5 for the scheme itself. And you have to, and when you bear in mind the schemes that have been built around it, much larger schemes, as I think everybody knows, and it wasn't required for those schemes, it doesn't seem, is it commensurate with that for this current proposal. There are other methods of doing that through SIL and other methods, and I know that's been something which has been advanced with the former councillor. I'm aware of that in the background. But whether that comes to bear fruit in the future, I don't know. That's something which is outside of our remit here today. But I think when you're looking at the scheme itself and looking at the size of the scheme, and we've got to be commensurate with the scheme itself.
Councillor Wilson first, then Councillor Wheeler.
Just a quick question, Mr. Carty. You said it's a net gain of 2. Can you clarify whether the extant planning permission is still valid? It's not clear in the notes. Thank you.
What we've been informed by the developer is that they've legally commenced the 3-unit scheme. Now, we don't have a certificate of lawfulness that says that. We don't have it lawfully through that process, but this is what they're telling us. And this is something that we need to bear in mind. It is part of the housing reserve site as well, so there is, with everything else that's gone around it, housing would be a suitable use for this site in principle. That's the difference, really. It is something which they're saying they've started. I know that they dealt with the pre-commencement conditions at the time. I dealt with the 3-unit scheme way back when. But we haven't had it through a lawful application, certificate of lawfulness. It is what is that they are telling us. And in terms of starting development, there's not much that needs to occur to have started development. So it could have been some footings, it could have been part of the access provided to make it lawful. it's a very small amount to actually be able to start the development, and then you can go back and continue at a later date.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of things here that worry me about this development. Apart from the parking, I appreciate it meets the standards, but it's front and back parking, which means that for those of you that are old enough to remember butterflies, there we go, the Chair obviously remembers it, the episode with cars reversing out and in order to let people in and out is something that very much sticks in my mind. I also think that bearing in mind the additional information that has been raised and the local information that has been raised by one of the speakers today concerning ecological and potentially protected species on that site, and bearing in mind that we haven't yet had a response from Surrey Wildlife Trust, I am nervous that we are determining this application ahead of that response from Surrey Wildlife Trust. Or Natural England coming back to us on that. I'm also very nervous, I think, as Councillor Garrett said, this isn't a site that all of us are particularly familiar with, but I am very well aware of a petition concerning road safety in this area, in particular the walk to school from this area along Belden Bridge Road and Kings Road in order to get pupils there. And I do think that as a committee, we may benefit from having both assurance from the applicant and evidence from the applicant that the existing application has been started and therefore the net gain is 2 or an almost 50% increase, depending on how you look at the treatment of this site. So I wonder if the officer could come back on the lack of response from Surrey Wildlife Trust, given that the ecological survey did talk about protected species very close by, and the additional information that has been provided by the other speaker this evening. Thank you.
On the point that you've just made, would a site visit be of value?
In my opinion, Chair, yes, it would be of value because I think it gives much better context about the road safety element within this particular site. And before anybody says something, I know that highways and county are the authority in this area, but I also know that if additional information comes to light, it's something that we could consider. And I do think that in this case, a site visit would be beneficial. I also think that it would give additional time for Surrey Wildlife Trust to respond and for potentially for us to encourage a slightly more detailed ecological survey of that site. I'm terrified to hear that there were badgers on that site, and we don't seem to have anything that pertains directly to evidential information as to whether or not that is the case, because I think that makes us slightly, puts us in an uncomfortable situation as the planning authority.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Garrett.
Just a quick question. The certificate of lawfulness, why have we not had it yet? Sorry. The certificate of lawfulness, why have we not had that yet? Because you said that's something you haven't got yet.
That's a matter for the applicant to apply for. That's not something that we could have chased with this. It's an application for 5 units on the site. It's a housing reserve site. Therefore, the principle for 5 units on the site isn't unacceptable. It is.
So they're asking us to extend it to 2 years based on the fact that we haven't got a certificate yet. Is that what was?
No. The 2-year extension is to allow them to start on this permission if it was granted, and gives them 2 years to start. For that one. Yes.
Anyone else? No. We have a suggestion of a site visit. Is that something that everybody would agree?
So I think I need to propose it, someone else needs to second it, and then we need to take a vote on it. Is that right, roughly? So I am proposing that the application is deferred, subject to a member site visit.
And lots of people want to second that. Pick a name, pick any name you like. Pardon? Yeah. And so we will defer for a site visit and Wildlife Trust report. Yeah. No, not that. Nice try.
So all in favour of the deferral, that is Councillor Garrett, Councillor Glowert, Councillor Kang, Councillor Noble, Councillor O'Mahony, Councillor Rowlands, Councillor Rakes, Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Whitcroft, Councillor White. All those against? Councillor Wilson, any abstentions? Councillor Tedder.
I didn't vote. No.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Betton, are you for or against?
I'm for.
Sorry.
I was counting. An important question. Councillor Omani, how do you pronounce your surname? Oh, used to all them all, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Just wait for the visuals to come up. This proposal relates to the redevelopment of a home for the homeless. The proposal is to provide 20 affordable houses with a mix of houses and flats. Please note the updates. These include amended and additional conditions.
Duncan, can you move the microphone? They can't hear up the back.
Can't hear. It's portable. See if that works. Okay. Is that better? Please note the secondary recommendation applied because the legal agreement has not been completed to date. I'll lead you through the plans and photos. The application site is located at the end of the cul-de-sac, Old Dean Road, in the settlement of Camberley. The allotment gardens wrap around the back of the site. There is a play area to the approach to the site, and the site is about 200 metres from the town centre. Here are some site photos. The top left photo, this is the application site from the approach road with the play area to the front. The top right, this is a photo that's taken from within the site. And then bottom left is a view down Old Dean Road from the site and from that end of the cul-de-sac. And this is a view of a nearby street, Barossa Road. Bluebell Mews is to the left with older housing in the distance. These are images of the existing building footprints, which shows the extent of build coverage and the new proposal. The flats are provided to the fronts of the site adjacent to the play area. The main entrance to the flats is to the rear of this building. The houses are arranged around the rear of the site, all orientated so that they face the central part of the site. Parking would be provided to the front with landscaping to break up this area. Here are some photos of the existing boundary treatments around Lawrence Lodge with the allotments. These are mainly chain link or similar fencing, but with some palisade fencing. The applicant has confirmed that close board fencing with trellis above is proposed to these boundaries. These are the elevations for the flats. The left-hand image is the elevation facing the play area. The right-hand image is the flank elevation facing the access road. The main entrance is immediately to the rear of the side wing. There are dormers provided to the top floor and recessed balconies in the main elevation. Here are the typical floor plans for the flatter block, in this case the south wing of the proposed building. It shows the ground floor to the left with the private amenity space, the first floor in the middle with the recessed balconies, and the dormers and balconies on the roof level with balconies which would face into the side. Here are the proposed houses. It shows the traditional built pitch roof form, but with modern styling such as the raised parapets and storm porches. Here are the typical floor plans for the houses, in this case a two-bed property. The ground floor is on the left and the first floor on the right. And here are some CGI images of the flats and houses, and there's some detailing on the right-hand side of the pattern brickwork to be provided for the flats. The site lies in the settlement area where the principle for the development and its use are acceptable. The proposal is 100% affordable, which includes 7 units, which are the houses for intermediate or shared ownership, and 13 units that are either flats for social rent. Car parking meets the county parking guidance, and the proposal meets amenity provision standards. The application proposal is supported with a recommendation to approve, subject to conditions and a legal agreement to provide the affordable housing and Salmon Sound contributions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any questions for the officer? Councillor Garrett, then Councillor Rowland.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number, so if I just throw them out. The first one I'm going to pick up on is the fencing. Was that us requesting the fencing to not be chain link? And the reason I ask that question is because Accent make their tenants have chain link fencing, which most residents don't like because of the privacy issue. So I'll be interested to find out if it was their request to have non-chain link fencing, because if that's the case, then maybe they need to understand the issue that others have. I'm just interested for that because of other issues with Accent. The parking, I know it meets the guidelines, but that's car park, what that says in the documentation, which, assuming it's the same as the usage now, that might be okay because not everybody's going to have a car. So I'm just picking up on that. Sorry, yes, no, I'm putting it on. I'll move it there. It was on. Murray's on as well.
Sorry, I've got to turn mine off, do I?
And I'll turn to you. There we go. Right, sorry. So the other question is reference, the comments reference the allotment and the fencing. I know it says it could be made as a condition. I would suggest we would like it to be made as a condition because, as you can see, with the fences are really close to the allotment, and obviously the allotment want their privacy as well. So I would suggest that would be something I would like as a condition. And I think the last, so the other point is reference the tree survey. Given the above seems to fail to adequately secure the protection of important trees within the site which contribute positively to character, I therefore recommend refusal for applicant under policy DM9. I'd be interested to see if they'd be prepared to put some trees in somewhere else, if that's even possible on that site, if we're going to have to take potentially damage or take some out. I think that covers all the points that, that covers all the points. Thank you.
The first point about the fencing, they have proposed it as close-bordered fencing on those boundaries. I think for privacy, and you could say both ways, but certainly for the residential properties, it would seem appropriate that they would be close-bordered for their own privacy. And that's what they're proposing, and that's what we would expect from the scheme. There is a condition on agreeing details of boundary treatments anyway. And we've pulled out of the general one to have it as a separate condition, because I think it needs a little bit more weight on that. And there's other matters as well in terms of getting it right around the site as well, as not just those boundaries. But I think close bordered is what we would prefer, because it does provide that privacy for that. The parking, yes, it does meet the guidance. It's 20 units, 25 spaces, so it's at least a space per unit, 2 spaces for some of the units. It was considered by the county highways as acceptable because of its location close to the town centre, about 200 metres, 250 metres away. We did, with the comments you just read out about the trees, is the comments from our tree officer. And quite honestly, we felt that it was wise for you to be aware of his full comments, because we were at disagreement with them about that in terms of the planning weight and the planning benefits that the scheme provides. And the tree that he's particularly worried about losing, there's no chance, because that's within the proposed building footprint. Where they're expanding the flats to make it work, in terms of getting the number of flats in there, there is one tree lost. I've seen the tree. I mean, it's not one that I would have thought would be worthy of particular attention, but that's something which our tree officer has requested. There is, as part of the scheme, and you'll see on the block plan, if we could have it back on. Thank you, Catherine. That in the middle of the site, there's a lot of landscaping and trees coming into it here. When you look at the site as it is, outside of the trees themselves, it's pretty barren. There's not much there except grassed areas. And actually, with this scheme, we could get quite a decent landscaping scheme. Yes, we lose a tree, we lose some other ones which are of poorer quality. That, I think, is the decent tree that he refers to. But I think overall, I think that it works when you've got to see trees in the light of the wider package of benefits the scheme provides in terms of the affordable housing, 100% affordable housing, etc. And it revitalises this site as well.
Councillor Rowlands.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll have to make excuses for being a novice in some of this. I can remember, I think, when Surrey Heath sold its council property, they discovered that the one element that they could not alienate was the provision for homelessness. And I will be corrected, but I think Lawrence Lodge remained in our possession, although Accent, or as it was then, Surrey Heath Housing Association, were able to continue to operate. And of course, Lawrence Lodge was part of that. Now, things have moved on. Decision was made by the council to alienate that property somewhere along the line to Accent, and I continue to hear complaints about Accent's operation. So one would question why, when the council had a decision for a housing authority, they didn't look possibly elsewhere. I went and had a look today, and it's completely void. Doesn't appear to be any, I can be corrected on this, anyone still occupying it. I wonder where the homeless are now relocated, and how long they've been moved out of Lawrence Lodge for that purpose. And the question arises where there was an identified need, which still exists, for people, for homelessness, the justification for moving ahead in this way. Just in crude numbers, originally Lawrence Lodge had 27 people living there. The proposal is for 20 people. I noticed that the request from our housing section to have it more or less identified in their bailiwick or responsibility was turned down, and so it's now operating on 65%. And presumably Accent, in their inevitable way, will actually decide who are going into the remaining properties which are available. So there's a lot of questions about this. I know I'm coming very late to it and speaking from it without a great body of knowledge, but I'd be interested to hear the justification and that we're proposing to move ahead in this way?
Yes, when I went to the site myself, it was some time ago, and I appreciate these things change because people come and go through the doors of the property quite quickly. There was only a handful of people living there, and the issue with the site, and I've got this as a spare slide in case this question came up, and that's to do with the existing accommodation. The existing accommodation is pretty substandard for the homeless in terms of there's a lot of shared facilities. There's shared bathrooms, there's shared kitchens, even some living rooms as well. But the facilities are shared, and these days for the homeless, they want to have accommodation which is self-contained more, and this was built back in the early to mid 80s. So I think time's moved on, and the way that it's arranged is not how they would now apply it. I understand. I haven't got any information about how they've moved them out, but I understand they have moved them to other accommodation, or they can do, and they've got other accommodation for it. But unfortunately, I don't have any details. What I have been informed is that and it certainly was when I went on site, there were very few people living there at that time. And I heard from our housing services manager that there's been times when it's been vacant as well. It's fluctuated a little bit, but the accommodation itself is substandard. It's past its sell-by date in that regard, and that's why it's come forward for redevelopment.
Thank you. Councillor White, then Councillor Wheeler.
My usual moan about definition of affordable housing. You mentioned shared ownership. That to me is not affordable housing. Affordable housing is social rentable accommodation. It does say provided at 100% affordable housing. Is there no way that we can keep it at 100% social rent as opposed to shared ownership?
I asked for an explanation of the split from Accent Housing about that. First of all, if you look at Annex 2 of the MPPF, which sets out what the types of affordable housing there are, shared ownership is one of those packages that could be put in there. Whether you agree or not, that's something that as a planning officer we have to deal with. But I understand it's on viability matters that it works at that split of 13 for the flats and 7 for the houses, shared ownership and social rent. That's what's been proposed.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. Could we go back, please, to the slide around the fencing and the location of the close board fencing? Okay, so the close board fencing is going in between the allotments and the development site, yes?
It will be on the boundary.
On the boundary of, okay. I just wondered whether or not we could add either an additional condition or informative that on the development side that there is soft landscaping that is included, because the close board fencing is largely there because I know there have been a lot of concerns raised by the allotment holders, and so absolutely understand why it's there. But from the development side, it's quite harsh. So again, looking at net biodiversity net gain, is it possible, please, that we ask for additional planting along that boundary in order to both soften the line of that close board fencing, but also to afford additional protection to the owners or the allotment holders, because it adds an extra barrier rather than something that can necessarily be climbed over. And I also wondered whether or not that landscape could be done in conjunction with the local ward councillors, who I understand have had a degree of petitioning from the allotment holders.
I'll pick up the last point first, and yes, it will come back to us, the landscaping details for an assessment and agreement of the details in a normal way. We'll have to think about how we can work that forward in terms of, because they're on the weekly list, and that there's something which is in the public domain. I'll have to work through how we can work with the ward councillors. you're thinking of the town ward, councillors, are you, councillor?
Is it town?
Town.
It would be town ward just, wouldn't it? But I should imagine. Yeah, it is town. So yeah, it would be the town ward councillors in that case.
Coming back to the matter with regards to the boundary treatments, I think I've already said about the fact that having a close border fence gives the privacy to both sides, but particularly to the residents of the future properties, and that would be the landscaping that we'd like to see there. There are going to be options where there are boundaries. If I show on here, in this area here, which is more, and at the top on this north boundary, which is boundaries with the development, the wider development, and not the gardens. So there'd be more scope there to do something. But whether that's the right way to have a fence and then I'm not quite sure what soft landscaping in those areas, because these are rear gardens which would have an element, I imagine, of soft landscaping, grassed areas. I'm not sure. I mean, we will see a scheme. We'll look at a scheme. There are proposals, you can see, to put more trees on the south boundary, for example. I think it's something we'll have to see when those details come in. But I don't know whether it would be right at this stage to be more prescriptive about what would be required there. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Whether it would be right to do so.
Can I check, please, who's responsible for maintaining those fences? So are the ones where that fence goes in, are they on the rented properties, i.e. those that are going to be retained, or are they for the properties that are going to be sold off? And again, if I'm just trying to future-proof this as much as possible, is there anything we can do? I have to say I'm actually more concerned about the planting on the southern part because of light. And they're quite short gardens, so actually, really, you want relatively small, manageable hedgerow type plantings rather than trees in that location, given the impact that light would have. But can we just confirm who's responsible for that close board fencing, please?
Yeah, if close board fencing is provided for the developments by the developer, and then by default it will go to the owners of the properties, the shared ownership, there would still obviously be part ownership by Accent, because it won't be fully owned by the new residents there. So the fencing would be under their control, and the condition is that it's retained in any case. The boundary, the allotments, is owned by this council, so we do have some control over it from a landowner perspective as well on that boundary. But I would imagine that Accent, stroke the new owners, would have the control for those gardens, for the houses. The rest of it would go back to Accent's control.
Councillor Garrett.
I'm going to go back to the fences. I alluded to some insider knowledge because of issues I've had with Accent residents and Accent and fences. Accent don't take responsibility for fences on their... they do take responsibility, but they have got a written policy that says they will not replace wooden fences with metal. They will replace them with metal chain link fences, okay? I have emails from Accent to say that. So it's interesting that we're now looking at wooden fences, because if the fence goes down, is blown down, that means Accent would have to replace it with a wooden fence, if that's what we give as a condition. Yet every single other Accent house is told they cannot have wooden fencing, they have to have chain link fencing. Now this is obviously an issue that has to come up with Accent, but it does highlight an issue, because in this planning application we are saying, and Accent are agreeing, that there needs to be wooden fencing, yet every other Accent, and I can give you reams of emails from residents complaining that Accent will not replace wooden fencing. So I think we do need clarification on this, because I think we'll be opening the gates on other residents and changing their fencing. Thank you.
Councillor Garrett, on the update reports on page 5,
condition 20, it states details of proposed boundary treatment shall be submitted to and approved by the local planning authority. So that basically safeguards any new fencing which comes forward as part of this application. So they need to submit those details as part of the application process. So that would basically safeguard any of your comments raised about the boundary treatment. Yeah, and can I just come back on a further point, Chair? It was just a comment raised by Councillor White in regards to the viability of the scheme. I appreciate the comments you raised about it being 100% affordable housing and you want more more social housing on the site. I mean, there is quite a high percentage of social housing on the site, 65%. I mean, if you read our policy CP5 in the core strategy, it states basically it should be an equal split between the different tenures of affordable housing, but this actual application goes above and beyond that, and we are still retaining 100% affordable housing with a higher share of social housing as part of the application.
Councillor Wheeler, then Councillor White.
Thank you. If I could just ask whether or not it's possible, please, to amend point 20 to say what it says, the approved, and then to provide it prior to the first occupation of the development, hereby approved and maintained in perpetuity. I don't know if that's reasonable, but I just think we probably need that extra clarification in there to safeguard.
Would I suggest retained rather than maintained? Yeah.
Is it pushing it to have maintained and retained?
I think, Councillor Wheeler, we can come up with some wording for that in perpetuity and put it on that condition. Okay.
Councillor White.
It's just going back on what Gavin was saying. The site is 100% affordable at the moment, yet we're dropping it to 65. That's acceptable.
So, Councillor White, I appreciate your comments about what is affordable and what may not be affordable, but technically, under the definition of affordability, intermediate housing is still a product of affordable housing, and so this application would still technically be providing 100% affordable housing as part of that application. So we are still having a 100% affordable housing scheme on this site.
I think we've come to the point where we need to consider the recommendation. You have an officer recommendation to approve with an amendment. Are all those in favour, please indicate? Pardon? Oh, propose and seconder. Yes, I'm not doing that, am I? Anybody wish to propose that? Councillor Garrett, seconder. Councillor Glowert. Sorry. Okay, all those in favour, please raise your hands clearly.
That's Councillor Garrett, Councillor Glowert, Councillor Kang, Councillor Noble, Councillor O'Mahony, Councillor Rowlands, Councillor... Oh, sorry. Not Councillor Rowlands, sorry. No. Councillor Tedder, Councillor Rates, Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Whitcroft and Councillor Wilson.
And me.
And Councillor Betton.
Those against?
Councillor White.
And abstaining Councillor Rowland.
So that's carried.
Thank you. Moving on to the next application. Application number 230328. Former Lakeside School playing field. There is an officer recommendation. We are not the planning authority for this. We are merely being consulted. But the officers recommend objection being made. Mr. Carty.
Thank you, Chair. This is the first of two Regulation 3 applications which are to be determined by the County Council as the planning authority of their own land and proposal. This council is only a consultee for this proposal, and the officer report and recommendation reflect this position. This has been submitted as an outline planning application which allows the submission of some, but not all, of the required details. These are details of appearance, means of access, landscaping, layout and scale. This application has been provided with details of access, layout and scale for consideration. A separate application will be required for the approval of what we term the reserve matters, the matters not determined on this application. And in this case, it's the external appearance and landscaping. The proposal relates to the development of an extra care apartment development of 49 social rented apartments. Please note the updates, and I'll lead you through the plans and photos. The application site is located at the end of the cul-de-sac, Caroline Way, in the settlement of Frimley. The site is defined green space in the settlement on the south side of Field Lane. The field is a former playing field at the rear of Lakeside Primary School. The main school site is located on the north side of Field Lane. Footpaths, Field Lane and St Catherine's Road run to the north and east boundaries of the site, with a new access needing to be provided across Field Lane. The surrounding land is predominantly suburban houses on cul-de-sac developments. The site is located at least a kilometre east of Frimley Centre. Here are some site photos. The top photos are taken from within the application site, with the residential properties in Kilmartin Gardens shown on the top left photo, and is angled more towards St Catherine's Road in the top right photo. The change in levels is noticeable on the top left photo. The bottom left and right show photos taken around the site. Bottom left is the view from Field Lane, with the new access to be provided across the path at this point, with the view down Caroline Way, the approach road, in the bottom right view. This image shows the suburban nature of the local area. Here is the proposed block plan with a colour image to show with the front of the building to the top of the image. The access is from the north, from Caroline Way. Parking is provided to the side, and the parking provision would be 25 spaces. The proposal would provide 3-storey wings with a double gable roof and flat roof elements for plants. These wings are linked to the front and rear with single-storey flat roof links with green roofs. The applicant has advised that the rear section would be sunk to a lower level, taking the benefits of the change in land levels to reduce the impact on the residential properties beyond. The main rear amenity space for future residents is within the courtyard area to be surrounded by the proposed building. These are the elevation details which show the proposed building height. The final detailing would be a reserved matter. Balconies are shown for the upper floor flats, and these will stand proud of the elevation itself. And this 3D image shows the massing of the development in its location and the suburban nature of the surrounding properties. Here are some 3D CGI images which show its possible appearance. These include a view from the front on the left, with a view from the rear with this amenity area on the right. The wings would have a traditional built pitched roof, but with modern stylings. As I say, balconies would stand beyond the main walls of these wings. The proposal is 100% affordable and would provide extra care apartments. The need for the development is not considered to outweigh the harm of this development. Concerns are raised about the loss of the green space. Whilst the update is noted, the adopted policy supports its retention as green space or reuse for recreational use, and it's not been demonstrated that this reuse has been explored first. The scale of the development and its urban form are at odds with the prevailing suburban character of the local area. It has also not been demonstrated that development could proceed without harm to protected trees. An objection is therefore raised to the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, anyone wish to ask any questions regarding this application? Councillor Garrett, then Councillor White.
It's a comment, really, initially. I know some of them have been withdrawn, and I know we have to take every single application separately, but if we'd had them on the table tonight, we'd have 170 different allocations for care homes, okay, or caring. And in every single one of them, we would discuss the possibility of the infrastructure issues, and they're all within the same sort of area. And we have already got a number of care homes in Camberley. In fact, it's becoming the care home town village of the UK, I believe. And I know we said it for refusal, so that's if we agree, that's fine. But for me, it's an issue I have that I know we need care homes, and I know we have to accept every single one as a different application. But we also need to really consider what we're having before us, because there are literally 170 tonight if we'd had all three come through. So it's just a comment, and I know there's not a lot we can do about it, and you're refusing it, but it's just a comment based on that. And I'm just trying to find it. I know when I read this, so it's 49 apartments, of which there are only 25 parking spaces. Now I know there's going to be staff, and I know, but again, and I know it's 0.5, and it probably meets. It's again a lot. It's very little parking, and we know that what happens is if there isn't enough parking, what happens is there's overflow onto the other areas. So again, I know it's suggestive refusal, but it's another point that there was not a lot adequate parking on there, in my opinion.
Can I come back to you on the point, particularly on the need issue? I'm not sure how many were here before to hear the discussion about King's Lodge Care Home and the proposals for that, which was dementia care and rehabilitation centre at the time. And that wasn't supported, and in the planning balance, we felt that the need did not outweigh the harm of that development. From the discussions around that with the NHS Integrated Care Board, also with the County Council adult social care teams as well, there was certainly the only thing that came out of the discussions that there was a need for was extra care apartments. All the other remaining things, health care homes and nursing homes, etc. You're right to suggest that they felt that there was enough supply. We don't have the policies in themselves to refuse them on that ground, but when you weigh it in the planning balance, which we've tried to do with this one as well, it sometimes weighs against it. But I just thought I'd let you know.
Councillor White.
Similar point. So am I right in thinking that this is going to be a council-run, socially rented care apartments with extra care, meaning that it's not going to have the ridiculous prices that the other care homes, like the one you just mentioned, and others in Bagshot, that are beyond everybody's capability to pay? So it's going to be a council-run facility, or have I read that wrong?
That is how it is being presented to us in terms of the application submission. It's County Council are the applicant for this application. What they then do with that permission in the future would be a matter for them, but that is how it's been presented to us, is a council scheme.
So there's no way we can condition this or anything. We're just not really being asked anything. We're just putting our points forward, and they're going to be ignored.
I can't say whether they'll be ignored or not, but certainly we've only been consulted on this, but because of the importance of these schemes, and I know that this one particularly has had a lot of local interest, we felt it right that it came in front of the committee for them to look at it and make their own comments if need be on top of what we think.
Councillor Whitcroft.
Thank you. Mr. Carty isn't in a position to comment on the issues related to the County Council, but speaking as an ex-member of Surrey County Council's Planning Committee many years ago, I'd just like to make the point that it is totally unacceptable for me, and I suspect many other people, for Surrey County Council to determine this application themselves when it has a huge impact on the locality around which this proposal is intended. And in that regard, I endorse the officer report fully. I also think it's inappropriate, and I fully understand somebody's going to shout at me that it's not a planning reason. This is an application which has come forward in relation to a playing field for a school, the future of which, as far as I can make out, and I've asked this question in several different places in the county council, the future of which is certainly not made public at the moment. And it seems to me totally inappropriate that the playing field for this school should be disposed of in this way, if I could put it in those terms, without the public being made aware of what the future of the school buildings are on the site. I don't know whether that's come over as part of the discussions that officers might have had. Thank you.
In terms of the future of the school itself, I don't know any more than maybe you do, Councillor, about that. I am aware in the background murmurs, but I don't know what it means for this site. What I do know is this field hasn't been used for a number of years, certainly as a playing field. And there is a test that the county will have to deal with Sports England about whether it is now technically redundant in their terms. So that will be picked up by county in terms of whether it should remain as a playing field or not, because it hasn't been for a number of years, and that's a matter for county in conjunction with Sports England. What I'm also aware of is that this is part of a number of these schemes that they're promoting across the county. So these are the two that I'm aware of in this borough, but I understand there's a whole number of similar schemes across the county. So we're not the only ones that have been asked to assess these, just for wider information.
Certainly to me, the bulk of the buildings being proposed in the application in relation to the surrounding housing is overwhelming. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Anybody else have any comments? Councillor Tedder, then Councillor Omar.
Who's first? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry. Looking at the amount of built form in that area and understanding problems in other areas that have got a lot of children, there's a lot of conflict between neighbours, people down the road, because there's nowhere for children to play. And I think we should be encouraging this to be left as green space, just for that reason, that children need somewhere to go, and it's something that's always forgotten. When they put in all these lovely plans, they look lovely with all their landscaping, but they don't think about Billy that wants to kick up against a wall. So I think this should remain green space. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Omar.
I recently visited the site and took it in from every single side. The size of it, the actual structures that are going on, what is an extremely small site in comparison to the houses at various elevations. Yeah, it's not a good idea in that location of that dimension. That's just my comment.
Thank you. Members, we have an officer recommendation to oppose the application. Do I have a proposer for that? Councillor Wheeler and a seconder. Councillor White, thank you very much. All those in favour of, hands right up, please. It's like being at school.
That's unanimous.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the second of the two Regulation 3 applications which are to be determined by the County Council as the planning authority of their own land and proposal. This council is also only a consultee for this proposal, and the officer recommendation and report reflect this position. It is an outline application with access layout and scale under consideration. Matters of external appearance and landscaping are reserved matters. The proposal relates to the development of an extra care apartment development of 60 social rented apartments. Please note the updates, and I'll lead you through the plans and photos. The application site is located on a former 50-bed care home in the settlement of Camberley, south of the town centre. The site has been cleared of all buildings, with all the buildings demolished. The site is located with an access onto Park Road, with a long west boundary with Park Street. The photo image on the right shows the former care home, with Elmsley Flats further away to the east and the telephone exchange building to the west. Camberley Town Centre is located to the top left corner, about 140 metres from the site. Just an image of the former development. As I say, it's now gone, it's all demolished, but just to give you a feel for the size of that development, which was single story in the main. It does have a big building footprint across the side, but it was at lower scale. And just an image we found of it after its closure. So here are some more up-to-date site photos. The top photo is taken from within the site with views towards the west boundary with the telephone exchange building in the distance, and towards the south west corner with properties that are in Park Street in this location. This is the view down Park Street with the long frontage onto that road from the site. And this is Park Road with the access just in front of the doctor's surgery, the prominent building here in the middle distance. Here's a proposed block plan with a colour image for comparison, with the front of the building to be at the north edge, the top of these plans. A new access is provided from Park Street, from the northwest corner of the site, with the parking located predominantly to the front of the site. Parking there would provide 30 spaces. The existing access from Park Road will be closed with a footpath access provided instead. The proposal will provide up to 4-storey flank wings with a flat roof over, including plant accommodation provided at roof level. These wings are linked to the front with a single-storey flat roof with a green roof. The main rear amenity space for future residences within the courtyard area behind the flat roof link. These are some of the elevation details which show the proposed building height. The final detailing will be a reserved matter. The 3D image shows the massing of the development in this location. It shows the development will be much larger than and out of scale with surrounding development. Here's some CGI images which show its possible appearance. The left-hand image is from the rear amenity space, with the right-hand image with the new access onto Park Street. Proposal is 100% affordable housing and will provide extra care apartments. The need for the development is not considered to outweigh the harm of this development. Concerns are raised about the scale of the development and parking area and its urban form are at odds with the prevailing suburban character of the local area and would have an adverse impact on residential amenity. It has also not been demonstrated that development can proceed without harm to protected trees. An objection is therefore raised to the proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, Councillor White.
Obviously, same concerns as last time because it's a similar thing, but 4 stories, it's going to absolutely overwhelm the surrounding areas, and looking at it, it puts me in mind of prisoner cell block H. So I don't think it looks nice. I know you can't take that into consideration, but 4 stories, it's just overdeveloped, bulk, height, whatever you want to call it.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Bit of a bizarre question, this for me. Can county completely and utterly ignore us?
Yes.
Any more helpful, happy questions? We have yes, Councillor Noble.
Is there anything we can do to overrule county?
No.
Could we make a decision as a borough to appeal the decision of county if we felt strongly enough about it?
I mean, in terms of the comments raised in both these applications, I mean, the reasons we've given are quite robust in terms of design, scale, bulk, massing, and for them to overturn and disregard our comments would have to be robust, and they need to be justified. We're only consultees to the application. In terms of whether or not we could challenge the decision, that would be something we can look into. But until we get to that stage, I think I can't really give you any sort of recommendation on that at the moment. But obviously, that does mean putting a challenge to the decision and also appealing against that in terms of going to the High Court on that decision as well.
Councillor Whitcroft, then Councillor Wheeler.
Is there any mechanism where we can have the outcome of the county's planning committee reported back to us so that we actually know what has happened with these 2 entirely inappropriate developments or proposed developments within our borough? Thank you.
So we've been chasing Surrey County Council via Mr. Carty for a number of months now, and I believe there's been no further updates in terms of any decision when it's going to go to their own committee. But as soon as we do know, we'll update all councillors in this chamber.
Thank you. It's a very similar point, actually. Can we formally record that as a committee we would like to have a further discussion on the outcome of these 2 applications, please?
I think so. Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Chair. If we were to go to High Court, sort of roughly what sort of budget would we be looking at for an appeal? Just to put things into context.
I'm going to refer that to our legal officer.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to pass the buck a little, and I'd have to speak to Gavin Ramterhole about that with court applications. He's got more experience of potentially advising on bringing a claim and what costs you'd be looking at, but it's something we can definitely follow up for you. The problem is we don't know what we would be challenging on because it depends. If we're going for a legal irregularities, so sort of a judicial review, I think it would depend on what our case is. It's very difficult to presume at this point what we would be bringing it for. But if you want some sort of ballpark figure on what it could cost, we could get that for you potentially.
Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Might I suggest that we, as a planning application committee, write formally to the chair of Surrey County Council Planning Committee, raising our reasons for an objection. I appreciate they will be recorded on the planning portal and however we normally record that response. But might I suggest that we formally write to the chair of planning? I have a feeling that they may know the area quite well.
Yeah, just to let you know that in the same way that we issue decisions for planning applications that we're determining, we do send a notice back to the county council of those comments, the recommendations set out in the report, if unchanged. So they will get that record back. There'll be official notice that goes back to them, if that helps. But I appreciate you're talking about another route through, but I just thought I'd let you know.
Not sure who makes that decision, if we have to take it back to full council to ask them to make it, ask the executive to ratify the fact that we want to write to them. I'm not sure what the process is on a basis, if we could just have that clarification, please.
Do we know?
Sorry, Councillor Wheeler, are you asking in terms of what? Sorry, can you just repeat your question again, please?
Of course. I'm just saying that I would like to recommend, and I don't know if the other members of the committee are in agreement with me, that we formally write to the chair of planning to point out and to raise. I appreciate it's going through the planning process. I appreciate when they sit on planning, they will see our response to the planning application. But just in the same way that we write to our MP on certain matters and other people on other matters, I'm just asking whether or not it is possible, please, to write to the Chair of Planning at Surrey County Council to highlight our reservations with these two applications, and to make absolutely sure that I'm sure he wouldn't miss them. But I don't think there is anything that could be missed by writing separately to him. In the same way that we get letters from various constituents as a member of the planning committee, in relation to the planning application. I don't know if that can be asked here, or if I need to wait and ask it at full council or executive or whatever. Happy to ask it wherever, but I'm just asking for that recommendation to be considered.
Gavin.
I will take some legal advice off Mr. Ramsahole, but it could be a possibility that we write a letter through our portfolio for planning, and then that could go direct to the chair of planning committee. So that could be a proposal.
Can we as a committee try and get my teeth in? Sorry. Can we as a committee make a recommendation to the executive that this should take place? Is that within our remit?
I don't know that it's necessary, to be honest, in that the leader or any councillor in this room is perfectly free to write a letter to whosoever they wish. If, for example, on a totally different subject, the SO pipeline, we had a problem. I spoke to the leader, Councillor McClafferty. He wrote a letter from the leader of the council to ESSO. It does not require a motion. It just needs somebody to do the job on behalf of all of us. Now, whether that's the leader of the council who is somewhere near you, or myself as leader of planning, or you as vice chair, it doesn't matter, as long as it's from Surrey Heath councillor expressing our views, and we can write what we want.
I think there's a slight difference between an individual councillor and the leader of the council, which is why presumably you requested that the leader of the council make a letter, right? So could I would have thought formally it should be from the chair of planning to the current leader of the council to ask them if they would support writing to Surrey County Council planning chair outlining our concerns. Whatever the legal process is, can we please have a letter going from the council, if this committee is minded to support that, to the planning chair at county?
Councillor Whitcroft, you had a light.
Why don't we just cut to the chase? and if the committee is minded to agree, I will be very happy to write on the committee's behalf, no doubt with a certain guidance from some of your officers, to the leader of the county council and to the chair of planning, and indeed to the 6 local county councillors.
Excellent. And I think it will be of great help if that letter can say that it was discussed at planning and a unanimous vote was. I know, that's why I'm saying it will be useful if that can be the case. No, not at all. Does that seem like a means of going forward, Councillor Wheeler?
It certainly is very close to my suggestion stroke proposal, Chair. Thank you. Yes, really haven't got my false teeth in today, have I?
Okay, so do we have a...
Just also, in terms of, just to let you know also, I have been in those discussions with the county case officers, so they are aware of the concerns that have come out of this report tonight. I've also sent them copies when they were published of the officer report, so they are aware of the concerns ahead of this meeting. Just, I thought you'd like to know that.
So whatever we say is not coming out of the blue at them. They know it's coming. Okay. So we have a recommendation. Do we have a proposer for that? Councillor Wheeler. A seconder. Councillor White. All those in favour, hands up high.
It's unanimous.
Thank you very much. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the business for this evening. Councillor White.
Just a housekeeping thing. I've just had a text from a resident who is watching this on YouTube, and they're saying they can't hear what the officers are saying. They can hear what the councillors are saying, but the sound with the officers is not very good. Whether your microphones are set up differently or what, I don't know, but that's just something to think about for future meetings.
Thank you. I'm sure the officers will look into that for the future. Can you? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.